Hi guys! I'm very happy to be here. I feel like I haven't talked to you guys in a very long time. Okay, so let's wait for people to join. All right, people are coming. So we're going live with Raqib, Hameed, Naik. So I'm going to send him a request. Comments are also going to be turned off on this because. Hi!
Hi, Assalamu alaikum, Sat Sri Akal. How are you, Monica?
I'm great. Just give me a second. I'm going to turn the comments off.
Sure.
Turn off commenting. I've had like I didn't realize, but like people would send me screenshots after like really weird comments. So okay guys, this is Raqib Hameed Naik, and if you haven't read his article in Al Jazeera about you know Hindutva organizations like taking advantage of COVID relief funds, please do that. But before we start talking about that, I want you to introduce yourself to everyone and tell everyone what you do and how you got started in journalism.
Sure. My name is Raqib Hamid Naik, and I am a journalist, basically from Kashmir. And I have been working as a journalist since last 7 years. Initially, I reported from Kashmir, then went to Manila in India, and then I have reported from China as well. And I moved to the US last year, and since then I'm here. And recently, I started my journalism career here as well. And the Hindutva COVID funding story was my first story from the US. And
Really?
yeah, yeah.
So, you've always worked with Al Jazeera?
No, I haven't. I write for them, but before Al Jazeera, I used to work for the Globe Post. It's a Washington-based news organization. I was the Indian correspondent. And before that, I used to work for Two Circles. It's a Boston-based news organization that covers Indian minorities. TwoCircles.net. It's a very good organization, excellent organization in the space since last 14 years when all these online media news organizations were not there. They have been covering Dalits, tribals, and all the other minorities, Muslims, Sikhs, and Christians since last 14 years. So I started my
Wow.
career with them in 2014.
Wow. So wait, are you from Boston?
No, I am not. I
Okay,
live.
I was about to say, I was about to say, like, why have I not met you yet?
No,
Okay.
I was there in 2019 and 2020 for the Howard India Conference, 2020 Howard India Conference. I was one of the panelists, and then did a lot of speaking around in at MIT, and we had smaller events as well.
I feel like we might have the same network circle because of the
Yeah,
schools you're throwing at.
yeah.
Yeah, I have a feeling. But the fact that you were okay, so the reason why I ask is because I'm from Boston. So,
Okay.
wow.
So you're right now
So
based in Boston, or
no, so my family, we live in a suburban town like 45 minutes outside of Boston, but like I'm from Massachusetts. So what ends up happening is like if you know people in Massachusetts, like the Indian community in Massachusetts, it's so small, like
yeah,
everybody knows everybody.
yeah.
Whereas in other parts, it's not of the world, it's not like that. But that's what I'm so that's why I was like oh, are you from Boston and I don't know you? Like, how does that work? But okay, so let's talk about your latest Al Jazeera article because wow, like just wow. So let's start with that. Tell to the people who haven't read it yet,
Yeah.
explain to them what's going on.
Okay, so I started on this lead in February this year, and
Mm-hmm.
I came across the data released by Small Business Administration. It's a federal agency that provides help to these small businesses and organizations affected by the COVID. And last year, the CARES Act was passed in the US, and that allowed SBA to extend a lot of programs to these organizations to help them in this pandemic. And there were like billions of dollars spent on giving the aid, and there were a lot of organizations, like hundreds and thousands of organizations across the U.S. had received those aids. So, but this data, I was very interested to knowing that whether these organizations, because I've been following Hindutva for a long time, the rise of Hindu nationalism in India, and when I was studying back in time about the rise of Hindutva in India, that was when I got to know about how this Hindutva, the Indian Hindutva, is supported by the American Hindutva, and how they complement each other. So they operate in two different countries, but how they are interlinked and intertwined. So that was when I got to know about these American Hindutva organizations. And when I came across the data, I was very curious to know whether these organizations have received the funds or no. And when I checked it, I was surprised. Okay, these organizations, I mean, I know what kind of work they do. In front of, like, people or online space, you would see they're doing a great work. But behind the scenes, what they're doing, I know that very well. So that's why I checked into that, and I found that they received nearly $1 million in federal COVID aid, like just five organizations, five top Hindu right-wing organizations in India. They received these different aids under paycheck protection program, which was a program created by SBA to, like, help organizations in paying their staff. And all these organizations, Hindu right-wing organizations, are either volunteer run, and they have a very minimal staff, and they don't need these funds because they already have their own donor base. They donate them very well, and during the COVID, as far as I know, that their donation wasn't impacted that much in the US. So why was there the need to apply for these grants in the first place? And the second was the concern that these funds could be used to fund hate in India, because that's what they do. They raise this money there and send it back to India. And if you look at their history, I mean, in 2014, there was this report that said that between 2001 and 2014, nearly $55 million from these organizations went down to India for different causes. And those funds in India went to RSS affiliated NGOs. So this is such a huge amount, and such a huge amount going to RSS affiliated NGOs in India. What could that mean?
Yeah, $55 million is a lot of money.
Yes, ma'am. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Um, wow. Okay. So some of these organizations that you mentioned in your article, at least one of them is headquartered in Massachusetts. I want to say it's the Vishwa Hindu Parishad, and I actually went and looked at their website, and I was very upset because they were like, who are Hindus? And like they were like, Jains and Sikhs are also Hindus, and it's like, no, bro, we are not. Like, so, and I know some of the people who run those organizations, and like I was very close to calling them out publicly. But my question to you is, how is something like the Vishwa Hindu Parishad, how are they funding hate in India? Like give me a step-by-step guide to like what you think is going on, or what your research shows is going on.
Sure. So there were 4 or 5 organizations that were mentioned in my article. Vishwa Hindu Parishad of Massachusetts, they received nearly $170,000, and then there was Ekal Vidyalaya Foundation, then Seva International, Hindu American Foundation, and Infinity Foundation. So particularly the VHP was most concerning to me. Of course, all the other 4 NGOs, nonprofits, except one, Hindu American Foundation, which is an advocacy group, they mostly fund things here in the US, like, lobby and for lobbying purposes and all. But others, the VHP and the other 3 nonprofits, they were very concerning. VHP is, interestingly, the sister organization of VHP India, the VHP America. VHP India was formed in 1964, and VHP America was founded in 1970. And they mentioned in their website, the Vishwa Hindu Parishad of America, they mentioned on their website that they share the very same values and ideals as its Indian counterparts. So what does that mean? So VHP in India, what do? They are involved in orchestrating, organizing riots, anti-Muslim riots, anti-Christian riots, anti-minority riots, and they have been involved in multiple incidents of lynchings against the minority community. They call for beheading those who convert to other religions. They are the people, very same people, Vishwa Hindu Parishad. They call for social and economic boycott of Muslims and other minorities. So having that kind of organization in America, in a country, in a free country like America, and they have been able to, like, do it so meticulously. Like, they've been able to hide their identities, hide their real intent and real work for so long that it actually surprises me. And what they do is, if you look on paper, all they do is they call themselves, we are seva organizations. We do service for the community. We raise funds. We fund schools in India. We do a lot of good work in India, and in America they run these family camps and all promote yoga, meditation, and promote, like, because when you talk about India, if you talk to a white guy here in the U.S. and tell him, "Hey, I'm from India," and the first thing he would say is, "Oh, yoga, meditation, peaceful people," like, but they don't know what is beneath this peace and yoga, what really, is hidden
Mm.
beneath these things that have been promoted for so long. So what they do is they promote these things here in the US, and they raise funds to run projects in India. Like, for example, VHP runs Support a Child project, and they run a lot of schools in India. But those schools in India are actually run by RSS in rural areas, tribal areas of the country. And they fund those schools. So in those schools in India, there are numerous reports, even the schools funded by Ekal Vidyalaya, the single teacher run schools in India. If you look at the reports, even the government reports, there's a report from 2009, government report that says that these schools are spreading anti-minority hate. They are telling students that Muslims do not belong here in the country. The Christians are here to convert you people. They spread this anti-minority hate and brainwash them, radicalize them. And if you look at the rise of Modi too, because this is all interconnected, how did BJP, from a bit part player on the margins, went on to win elections in 2014? This was just because, due to the work of RSS in the rural areas of the country through all these decades, when we were silently sitting in our homes, enjoying our coffees and cokes, they were working there on the ground in the rural areas of the country, radicalizing the people. And this is what I believe in 21st century. If there has ever happened a mass radicalization anywhere in the world, it's in India. And this works through different steps. This works through different parts. So schooling, this education is one of them. So VHP says it's a cultural organization, it does all this work, but actually those funds go on radicalizing the people down in India, from children to young to old, everyone.
So they say, like, if you want to create a fanatic, you start young.
Yeah,
Hate is taught. I firmly believe that. Like, if you grow up in a household where people or your parents don't differentiate between religions or caste or creed, you grow up thinking it doesn't matter.
yeah,
If you grow up in a household or in a setting where they're telling you that you are better because you are Brahmin or you have white skin, or for whatever reason, or because of your religion, you grow into an adult that hates, and you grow up into an adult that thinks that other humans don't deserve to live because of that. We I firmly believe we are not paying enough attention to Hindu extremism and Hindutva terrorism. I think there was the shooting that happened in New Zealand that kickstart this whole, like, white supremacy kind of nonsense that's going on. Um, he wrote a manifesto. Like, I think it was like some sort of 1,000-page or like super long manifesto in which he credited I have to go back and read this book, some RSS leader, for how they want to create a Hindutva race because they believe in, the superiority of the Hindus. And then this guy um, in his manifesto wrote that in the same way he believed in the superiority of, the white human. So when we want to look at white supremacy and where it stems from Hindutva, and not enough. Not It's not talked about enough how Hindutva is influencing hate, not just in India, across the world.
Yeah, yeah. So I would like to add to the manifesto thing. It reminded me of a good point. It didn't even start from New Zealand. If you look back at the attack in Norway, when where 78 people were killed by Anders Breivik, he wrote a manifesto and he mentioned Hindutva and Hindutva leaders nearly 70, more than 70 times across his manifesto. He drew inspiration. So white terrorists drawing inspiration from a Hindutva leader or the ideology of Hindutva. So what we can deduce from this is that all these right-wing movements across the world are somehow interlinked, somehow interconnected. What unites them is Islamophobia. What unites them is xenophobia. It doesn't matter for them. If you look at organization, like, because that's what brings them together. White supremacists hate Muslims. Same goes for,
100%.
yeah, same goes for Hindutva. And if you look at particularly talking about the ideology of Hindutva and how they're operating in the country, Hindutva is actually a Brahmanical ideology. They're all Brahmins. They don't care about what people like, for example, people from their own community, like the Hindu community, like Dalits, I mean, they have been oppressed for decades, for centuries. And right now, what they are doing is because for poor people in India, what they do is they up their, like BJP, because it's the political arm of RSS. So what they do is they up their rhetoric and play on the people's fear and anger to get votes. And what they are doing is, like BJP, it is subverting the very same process that brought it to the power. A democratic setup, it brought it to the power, and now it is subverting the very same process. And still, like right now, there are elections going on in the country. There is no mention of like, how people are struggling due to COVID and all, but all they care about is religion. They're attacking all out Muslims and everything. So, so in India, the Hindutva movement in India actually wants to, like, divide people and attain the state power and get in the power. And of course, marginalize the minorities, kick them out of the country, ultimately, because the things as I see right now, as experts are seeing right now, it's going towards a genocide. And if you look at the American Hindutva, because what they do is they adapt themselves according to the host country. So they are playing playing into the multiculturalism thing, like, it's a multicultural thing, multicultural country. And what they are doing is they have been able to make the inroads. They frame their arguments in such a way so that they sound liberal, multicultural. But at the core, what their agenda in the US is, because they cannot, of course, attain the state power. So here, their only objective is to further marginalize the Indian American minorities,
Yes.
be Muslim, be Sikh, be Christian, any minority, be Dalits. They just want to work, and they just want to. I read this paper a long time back on American Hindutva, and the guy who wrote that paper mentioned that American Hindutva actually works to, of course, marginalize these minority groups, but at the same time to homogenize the Hindu society. So they deny the existence of caste. Oh, it's a colonial construct. There is no caste. Like right now, there are caste resolutions going across the U.S. I mean, some of the resolutions were recently passed in California, but they deny the existence of caste. They say, okay, this is not related something to Hinduism. If you pass this resolution, this will lead to Hindu phobia. So
Yeah.
actually, this is such a dumb argument. I don't know how they come up with the argument. Of course, if you're a casteist, you have to be afraid of this resolution or these laws being passed, because you're a casteist, you believe in discriminating Dalits, then of course you are going to be targeted. How does that lead to Hinduphobia? And any argument, for example, I wrote this article explicitly in the headline, it mentions Hindu right wing. That means we're talking about the right wing. It doesn't matter whether it's a, we call there is right wing in Islam too. There is right wing, Christian supremacism, Christian right wing. But when it comes to Hindutva, they spin this whole argument and start targeting the critics, telling them you're Hinduphobes.
Yes, yes. I was in a meeting. So back in, I want to say December. So we support some local politicians, not at the federal level, but at the state level. And there was a fundraiser, and obviously because of COVID, it was over Zoom. So I'm minding my own business, da 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 da, and like somebody comes in and is like, "What are you going to do to fight Hindu phobia?" All of a sudden my ears went up, and the gentleman, the politician, um you know kind of rescued it and was like, "Ma'am, in Massachusetts there's no such thing as Hindu phobia." Like he said it flat out, just like that. And but then again, America and Massachusetts is a progressive state, right? So they tend not to suck up to India here. However, what happens is, especially in I've noticed in more centrist Democrats or even Republicans, is that they tend to feed into it. Hindu phobia, I've noticed, is a combative or a counter argument for anything that you may say to dissent or to argue against, anything that Hindutva does. If in an argument I say, "Hey, the New Zealand manifesto or Norway manifesto mention these people," and they'll be like, "No, that's a false narrative. It's just Hinduphobia." And that's a very strange thing to say, that your religion doesn't have fanatics. Like if I can stand here and say, "Yeah, Sikhism has an extremist wing, or Hindu or Christianity has an extremist wing, or Islam has an extremist wing," yeah, Hinduism does too. And it's a very strange argument, or a very strange concept, that no one is willing to accept that.
Okay, yeah, that's true. And I would add to that. See, I mean, you would have seen that whenever someone does anything wrong and you believe that you're wrong, and when someone says something that is true, you get defensive. So what they do is they get defensive when they use this Hinduphobia argument, because they know they're wrong, what they're doing is wrong, but it's just they want to hide it. They just want to play in victim, and they accuse other communities of playing victim. And about this defending, and this is what Hindutva in America is doing since 2014, defending every policy decision taken by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, whatever, from abrogation of Article 370 to implementation of Citizenship Amendment Act. They are all out in the support. Like there were resolutions being passed by the city councils in the US, and these Hindutva folks will show up. I would not, because Hinduism is different than Hindutva. We have to make that clear distinction, because Hinduism is not Hindutva and Hindutva is not Hindu. These are two separate things. Hindutva people are using their religion, they're subverting their religion, using their religion for their own political ends. So yeah, and same thing has happened with Islam too, with other religious communities too. So what we are doing is we are just telling from our experience to our Hindu folks, "Hey, people, be careful. These people are wild. They're using your religion to paint you bad," because it is going to have a long-term implications on the community as well. 10 years, if this continues like this, 10 or 15, because see, history repeats itself, but it doesn't repeat itself in totality. It repeats itself in rhymes. And history has seen, in history we have seen people like these rising up from a community, doing bad things, and ultimately the community ends up at the receiving end. And 10 years from now, because this ideology will, of course, ultimately fall, and we have seen in 20th century the fall of fascism, Nazism, and other ideology. This ideology will fall. It's just a matter of time. So, and then when it will fall, these people who were supporting them, who were tactically staying neutral, not speaking up, they will have to answer these questions, and they will have to bear they will have to bear the consequences. Their children, they have to be answerable for these deeds that people, these right-wing Hindutva leaders, are doing right now on their behalf. And coming back to the defense of the Modi government, this Hindu, like for example, Hindu Foundation, Hindu American Foundation, it's a lobby group here in the Washington DC advocacy group, quote unquote advocacy group. So they have been vehemently defending all the decisions taken by the Modi government, from abrogation of Article 370. I was back in time in 2019 when the article was abrogated. I was in Kashmir. I still remember that day, August 5th, 2019. August 4th, I was on a shoot. I was shooting a documentary, and I was in a distant, far off village, no network. And I reached down in the main town, and I was doing the car wash, and I got a call from my friend. Hey, it was like 7 in the evening, and he called me and he told me, hey, you just better go home because there's something brewing up. Streets are filled with army, and they're going to impose a statewide curfew. And it was like 7 p.m. and my house was like nearly 300 miles away from there. I was in Anantnag, and my home is in the other part of Jammu district, Jammu division. So at run and morning, of course, finally I made it. And I know it was a hell of an experience. And after August 5th, I first and witnessed like how life is like, without internet, with all the clampdown, with the total blackout and everything. And I was myself like paid visit by a couple of security intelligence guys at home, interrogated, and then I had to run too. I was in Delhi underground for like a month, and finally I was able to make out of the country and came to the US for a couple of speaking engagement. And I briefed before the US Congress in December 2019 on the situation in Kashmir. But these organizations, that was the first time when I came to know about how these organizations practically operate. They were like, whatever was happening on the ground, they will develop a counter document. Okay, people are suffering to medicine. Oh, there is plenty of medicines. People don't have food to eat because there is no work. Oh, there is plenty of work. Everything is normal. Then why the clampdown? Why this total blackout? They would say, oh, there are terrorists and all, like, we just want to keep the region normal. There will be, so I mean, all these dumb arguments. So they have been defending, and this is the central pillar of Hindutva in America, to defend the Indian government. No matter the right-wing government in India, this regime in India, no matter how extreme they go, they have to come in support of them. They have to defend them and ultimately influence US foreign policy towards India, so that it is always favorable to them.
Yes. So people underestimate the amount of influence that these people have in Congress. Let me reiterate that the Indian caucus, or the India caucus in the House of Representatives, is one of the most powerful caucuses in America. The Indian lobbying groups, or the pro RSS lobbying groups, are some of the most powerful in America. And it's almost, they have junk money. Like, okay, let's talk about this. Let's talk about how I think we've discussed this a little bit, how Hindutva operates in the US. You can add to that if you want, and then how the US funds hate in India.
Yeah. So the first thing I would start with how Hindutva, how they fund hate in India, and of course then we'll jump on to how they operate in the US. I would go the other way around. How they operate in the US is the first one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the Hindutva groups in the US, the folks who are sympathetic to this ideology, have been long working through this politics of recognition. They have been running for offices. Like, this is a slow infiltration of the system. If you need to learn this, if you want to understand how they're doing it here, you have to look at India, like how RSS was able to make inroads. And right now, when you look at the democratic institutions, the institutions that make up the democracy, from legislative, executive, to the judiciary and press, all four have been infiltrated. It's like completely saffronized in India, right? So they're using the same methodology in the US as well. These people who are sympathetic to the cause, young kids and all, brainwashed by this ideology, they are making the inroads. And Hindutva folks have a lot of money. And if you live in America, you know very well how good the Indian community, the Indian American community is when it comes to they run hotels. Look at Gujaratis, all the motels across the US are owned by them. Look at the Silicon Valley. You will find one Indian among every three people you will look out on the street. Maybe two Indians in every third person, every second person is an Indian. So they're making big money in there here, and this big money that they're making, and these ideologues, these Hindutva folks in here, like HSS, which is the RSS counterpart of in the US, Hindu Swayam Sevak Sangh. These are mentoring these people. Okay, we have a lot of work to do. We have to establish a Hindu Rashtra back home. We have to work for our motherland here because India is a Hindu Rashtra, and we have to, like, do service for our motherland. So we need money for lobbying, for people running to the offices. Look at the campaign of Shri Prishant Kulkarni in Texas 22 district. He, of course, lost, but he was and these people in America, most of them are Democrats, believing in the democratic values. But what they do is the opposite.
Yeah.
What they do is the
Yeah.
opposite. In America, they are Democrats, but in India, they will support a fascist. In
100%.
America, they seva, but in India, they will promote hate. This is what they do, like dualism, double-sided thing they do. So in America, they will do things because this is also important. This also falls in this context. They are doing this just because it doesn't affect them. Because in India, whatever people do, Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians fight, it doesn't concern them. But in US, it concerns them a lot. So that's why they do things that are favorable to them. They will support for Black Lives Matter movement because they also are brown. They could also be racially profiled, but they will not stand
Yeah.
with Dalits. They will not stand with Muslims in India just because it
Yeah.
doesn't affect them.
Actually, in Silicon Valley, the situation is, from what I hear, very bad. Like these high caste, Hindutva people have somehow gotten like very high positions in a lot of companies, and they, like, say if there's an Indian person trying to climb the ladder, they prejudice them, on caste. Apparently, I want to say they sued forgot the company's name, but there's a lawsuit
Cisco,
that,
yeah,
yeah,
Cisco,
there's a lawsuit going on for
yeah.
that. So
Be
people underestimate how prevalent it is in America.
yeah. And before this interview, speaking.
You went mute. You went mute. Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Okay, better. No, still can't hear you. Okay, what happened?
Yeah, I don't know. It broke. So I was speaking to before this call. I was speaking to a Dalit activist in California, and he
Yeah.
told me how caste, like the caste. I mean, the conversation in California that's going on right now, and I mean, there's a huge conflict going on between the lower castes and the Dalits and the upper caste in there, and how these upper caste men in the companies, in the universities, are trying to stifle the voices of Dalit people and discriminating them. So I mean, it's crazy. And also the professors, like especially in the academic spaces, he told me, give me an example that there was this one guy who applied to a university in Chicago, and there was this upper caste professor. He looked at his profile and everything. He only applied for a research as a research assistant, and the professor looked at, he was an upper caste dude, and he looked at his application and everything, and he said, "Oh, you don't fit for it." But then he filed for a review, and the other committee took over his case, and they were African American, and they were like, "Oh, he's a very genuine person to fit in this profile." They took him in.
Mm.
So, I mean, this is how a caste is working in the US. Uh, I mean, in every space.
You're muting again. Yeah, you went mute again.
Okay. Yeah,
No, you're back.
I'm
You're
sorry.
back. You're back.
All right. So, yeah.
Um, Somebody was also telling me that there's a lot of sexual assault against Dalit women, especially in California.
I mean, I haven't like gone into that, but that's highly possible because US is full with Indian immigrants and these people like down in India because I've worked in India and I know how caste operates and how extreme it is. So these are the very
Hmm.
same people who are coming to the US when they
Hmm.
cannot forget their curry masalas and all. How can they forget their casteist behavior? I mean, that
Yeah.
casteist mentality, that Brahmanical mentality. Of course, they are going to take it with them as a in their bags wherever they go, either it's US, UK, or anywhere.
Mm. Let's take some questions real quick. Let me see. All right. Okay. Hmm. People are just saying Kisan Mazdoor doesn't. Okay. These are very randomly horrible questions.
Okay.
In Canada, they arrange all the events under the name Indo-Canadian Commerce. Have you heard of this? This was a
um,
random question. In
no.
Canada, they arrange all the events under the name Indo-Canadian. Yeah, so we have actually seen this a lot where they're like, oh, promoting Canadian Indian friendship. Okay, I don't know how to get rid of this.
I mean, of course, they create these organizations. And there, for example, there is this organization called Indian Development and Relief Foundation in US. What
Hmm.
they do is they do RSS bidding, like, they raise funds here and send them there. Like, there's this report from 1994 to 2002, 50% of the funds they raised in millions of dollars, they went to RSS in India. RSS
Yeah.
affiliated nonprofit. So yeah, they use these names that sound appealing to you. You don't even know what's going behind the scenes, but in reality, in actuality, they are funding the hate in India. This is how they
Mm.
operate. They will keep these good, nice, secular, liberal, Democrat sounding names,
Hmm.
but it's just to conceal the real intent of their work. They will not say, like, they will not use a provocative name, of course. It will just, like, yeah. So,
So, um, I don't know how to get rid of this now. It's like frozen. Shoot. Chalo, koi na. Um, yeah, actually, that's true. That's true. That's true. Let's talk about Kashmir because you're from Kashmir and you
yeah.
spoke about this briefly, but Kashmir is an area of India that I think has probably seen the most turmoil um, than anywhere else. Um, and yes, it's heavily Muslim. It has a heavy Muslim community, but people don't understand that it has a heavy Sikh community as well. And I forgot the name of the event, but there was when Bill Clinton was there, where 35 Sikh men were just shot in broad daylight by the Indian army. And
Chitsinpura massacre.
yeah, and say that again?
Chitsinpura. I cannot even pronounce the name correctly, but it's
Chatti Singh.
Chitsinpura massacre.
Yeah, so Chatti Singh Pura massacre, and Clinton was there at that time. And when we had the Delhi massacre after the CAA protest, Trump was there. So India has a habit of masking massive genocidal kind of incidents behind American presidential visits. And I shouldn't say this, but it leads me to wonder: is the United States, aiding and abetting in this hate? Because they're definitely not doing anything to stop it.
Yeah, I mean, if you have to understand the role of US in the whole thing, especially with concern to promoting human rights and defending religious freedom in India, you have to look at the broader geopolitics of the region. For US, India is an important ally, and especially right now when there is threat from China. China is the number one threat to the United States right now. And to counter
Mm,
that, they think that India is an important ally. India can, counter China. But
Hmm.
someone like me who has lived both in India and China thinks that, because I've been in China, I've lived there for nearly more than half a year,
Uh,
and I know that India is not even like 5% closer to what China has achieved. China is a
yeah,
country, tremendous development. They are
yeah.
more developed than United States when it comes to infrastructure,
Hmm.
right? So it's when infrastructure, technology, and everything. China has
Yeah.
made tremendous development, and I don't know why they think that India can counter China. But yeah, that's the whole separate argument, the whole separate discussion. But this is what they think. So for them, keeping India in good books, having India on their side is very important. So what they do is, what successive US administrations have been able to do is, they have traded their economic interest, their political interest in lieu of human rights. They are ready to sell human rights for their own
Hmm.
interests. And this is what has happened over the past so many decades. And especially when it comes to Kashmir, the massacre you mentioned, of course, it was a horrible massacre, but the government blamed it on the militants. So
Yeah.
he came to India, and Bill Clinton came in, and there was he was going to talk about, because it's very symbolic. Whenever a US president speaks on Kashmir, it's it generates a lot of debate, a lot of attention, a lot of heat on India. So
Hmm.
to hide that, they always do something. That time it was that massacre, the Sikh massacre, and the other times
Hmm.
it's some other thing to promote as if what is happening in Kashmir is terrorism.
Yeah.
So to mask that thing, they, I mean, do these covert things as well. So of course, what you mentioned is totally right, and there is a huge Sikh community in Kashmir, and I have had chance to, work with them closely as well. I mean, have you ever heard about Pulwama?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like the hotbed of militancy in Kashmir. It's like Palestine. People usually locally refer it to the Gaza Strip, Palestine. So down there, there's a huge Sikh community. And back in time, when I went to, it was in 2015 to be precise, and I went to cover the funeral of this militant leader in Pulwama, and just talk to the locals, because back in time I was working on a story, how educated young men were joining militant ranks, because I wanted to know, why are these people, young men, joining? And I went to this funeral of militant leader, and I saw there, irrespective of ideology, what ideology people adhere to, but when it comes to the pain and the suffering and sharing the pain, all these communities are together. Muslims and Sikhs in Kashmir are strongly bounded. No one can break that bond. They are together. I've seen it. I've seen it. And Sikhs have suffered a lot, along with the Muslim and the Hindus too, the Kashmiri Pandits. But what these Hindu folks do is, they weaponize the pain of these Pandits. You know,
Yeah.
they weaponize, they politicize it just because, to target Muslims. They will find any excuse to target the minorities. Right now, before it was, and as this German pastor Martin Niemöller has said, that first they will come for, and then they will come for this, and then they will come for that. Same is going in India. First they came after Dalit Muslims, Dalit Christians, now Dalits, now Sikhs. They will come after everyone who questions their authority, who questions their ideology, who questions them. So they're going to come after everyone. Right now, it's the Sikh.
Well, see, that's the other thing that when people don't realize about the Pulvama attacks, that it wasn't just militants or, because I have a huge Sikh following, so I want them to understand that or just Muslims. There were huge amount of Sikhs, that lost a lot during that as well. So keep that in mind. Um, what do I want to let me just see if we have any more questions up in here
Sure.
first. Okay. Uh, what is so one of my friends said, I have met surrendered militant from Pak. Okay, what does that mean? Sorry, I don't know what's going on with the. Oh, I got rid of it. So I actually didn't find any interesting questions. Yeah, so this person is saying that whenever a US figure goes to India, they do these killings to portray there's an issue with. Yeah, so let's talk about delete the CAA oh my God, now it's stuck again.
Sure.
Um
The CA protests and the Sikhs.
yeah.
Hmm.
No, well in Delhi because I wanna say the guy's name was his name Abhinav Mishra, the BJP guy who
Couple
came and gave a
Mishra.
speech. Kapil Mishra. Um in his speech instigating the crowds reminded me a lot of Amitabh Bachchan's speech on Doordarshan, where he said something like "Khoon ka badla khoon," and Abhinav Mishra was like, "Bas yehi ek mauka hai," or what, or something along like you have this one chance to get rid of this, otherwise,
Yeah.
you're gonna if you let go, like it's not gonna happen again. And there was in both of those speeches, there's a similarity because they were done on purpose to rile up crowds and to speak to raw emotion. In 84, Amitabh Bachchan's speech was like, "Oh, like your prime minister has died." But for some reason, when Trump came to visit, that speech was different. It was very light, but there was like it. What you can see there was so much breeding of hate. The hate for the Islamic community had grown to such an extent that it took a very minuscule incident to create a genocide. I mean, 51 or 52 people died.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Kapil Mishra's speech, of course, that instigated the riots. And you have to look in terms of the ideology, the Hindutva ideology, because Hindutva, I literally call it Hindutva fascism. And what fascism do is they encourage rhetoric that promotes fear and anger. This is the
Mm-hmm.
kind of rhetoric they promote. Before the Kapil Mishra speech, you had to look between what happened between December 9 and 10 until February 23rd when the riots happened in Delhi. This whole period was full of rhetoric. There were Delhi elections. Amit Shah was saying, current button yahan dabao, current Shine Bagh pahunchna chahiye. There was this other guy, the union minister, and he was saying "Goli maro salon ko" from the stage. And of course, this Kapil Mishra, he led a couple of rallies in Delhi, asking people to shoot the traitors, quote unquote traitors, referring, of course, referring to Muslims. So they ran this whole rhetoric for nearly 3 months in Delhi. The media will play up to their tunes. Across the country, this environment was created that these people are traitors, this law, and again, the defensive mechanism that the Hindutva use to defend the law, both in India and abroad, that C is a good thing, these people are just making such a fuss, this is just for the persecuted minorities in the bordering countries. But this was more than that because Muslims knew how it was going to affect them. Because this was not,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to look at CA in isolation. And what this Hindu lobby was trying to do was to make people look CA in isolation. But this was just the one component of the three laws, and that was CA, NRC, and NPR. And when these three laws are brought together, it actually disenfranchises Muslim minority. All other people have legal recourses under CAA. They can get the citizenship of India, but these are the people who will be thrown in the detention centers and kicked out of the country. And that was why they were on the streets. But what perception did the Hindutva and the media created that these people were there to disrupt law and order? They were traitors, they were anti-nationals. And it
Mm-hmm.
rose to a level that it just needed a spark to incite the riot. And that happened with Kapil Mishra's speech. It started with a small crowd. They started attacking. The crowd got bigger and bigger and bigger, and it ended up taking 52 lives, most of them Muslims.
No, the 52 were all Muslims.
No, most of them were Muslims. So there were Hindus too. See, this is the sad reality of the things that Kapil Mishra incited the riots, and he incited people and everything, and he went home. He didn't participated in stone, like, he didn't went personally to, like, attack Muslims and all. But his ideology, he radicalized people, brainwashed them, and, like, motivated them to attack Muslims. And what these people, they just go back, and they sit back and relax and watch the action unfolding in front of their eyes. And these are the poor people who follow these wild ideologies fall victim to. Muslims who die, and the Hindus, of course, like, who participated. Of course, there was retaliation from the community to the Muslim community.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
but this is the sad reality that people, irrespective of their religious affiliation, people had to die.
So sad.
Yeah.
So sad.
And right now they're doing the same to add to the CA thing to the farmer protests in Delhi too. They're creating this
Yeah.
perception that Sikhs are Khalistanis, they're terrorists. They have this ulterior motive of, like, creating their own country. They want to, like, secede from India, and this is not farmer protest. This is something else. Like, again creating that narrative that they created during the CA protests, and they're trying to create this narrative so that it comes to a point. See, right now, right now the people are protesting, but now this farmer movement has become more than a Sikh only farmers protest, because there are people from Haryana, there are people from Uttar Pradesh, from other states. But initially what they try to do is they just try to project it as a protest from a particular community. There were Hindus who went in there. It was following a similar pattern to what happened during the Delhi CA protest. But here, the Rakesh Tiket came in, and the people from the other community, that
Came
somehow,
in.
like, cooled the tempers. Otherwise, it could have ended up in the same way as Delhi CA protests.
So one thing I find very different between the farmers' protest and the CAA protest was that I didn't see a lot of the Indian Muslim community coming together and doing what the Sikh community across the world has done. Um, I do believe that we took it a lot seriously, and for me, I'm a second generation, first generation. My dad was the first to emigrate here on my dad's side. My grandfather and my mom. I don't know what I am, but anyways, I'm children like me have been raised by their grandparents who for whom the wounds of the Sikh genocide, which started in 84, are still fresh. So kids my age took it very, very seriously that this is happening and we need to be woke
Yep.
and vocal about it. Um, I mean, that's why I started talking about it. But I didn't see the same type of vocalness from the Muslim Indian community when it came to the CAA protest. Am I wrong? Was I just ignorant about it, or what do you have to say about that?
When you say Muslim community, you're talking Muslim community in diaspora, right? Indian
Yeah, in the
Muslim.
diaspora, the
Okay.
Indian Muslim, like kids our age, like
Yeah.
me, in the
Okay.
diaspora across the world.
Okay. So there are a couple of things. First, I would say that, of course, there were people from the diaspora, Indian Muslim diaspora. They came out. There were protests in almost 100 cities across the world, and
Really?
yeah, during the CA protest. But there's other thing to it too. Sikh community in diaspora is very strong. There are so many Sikhs in the diaspora. Like, you go to Canada, you go to UK, you go to US. But Muslims, Indian Muslims, they are not able to make it this far. There are certain factors to that, and you have to look at the socio-political and economic condition of Muslims in India. If you read the Rajendra Sachar Committee report, you would find that Muslims are worse than Dalits when it comes to education. So most of Muslims are not
Really?
able to get proper education. So if you don't have proper education, how are you going to climb that ladder, like, have that mobility and come to the top and emigrate out of the country, find a good job in the US, UK, or for any XYZ purposes, right? So, due to the socio-political economic condition of Muslims in India, they're not able to achieve what other communities have achieved, whether it's Hindus, Sikhs, and all. And for those who have, like, done that, come onto the top and moved abroad, of course they're active. In US, there are Indian organizations. There is Indian American Muslim Council. It's a American Indian Muslim advocacy group in the US. Uh,
Was that, I think they might have been the
yeah,
ones that
yeah,
introduced
yeah,
us, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So, Indian American Muslim Council, and then there is Indian Muslim Relief and Charities. There are nearly 10 to 12 Muslim organizations in the US that are working right now for charity, in the charity field, in social work and advocacy. So there are in UK, Europe too. But I mean, it's not as strong as the Sikh diaspora is. And the reason is, like, as I mentioned, the socio-political economic condition in India, and that is one of the main reasons. But yeah, of course, they are able to, like, make a good hold in the community. Slowly, they're rising up. It will take time, but and adding to that, that's my next thing. I mean, in isolation, whether it's Sikh community or the Muslim community or any other Indian community in the diaspora from India. I mean, if they have to work on these issues, they have to forge alliances, they have to come together, and they have to extend solidarities, be unified, because solidarity and unity is the single most important thing that creates fears in the mind of fascists. Single thing:
Yes.
solidarity and unity. You stay united. I mean, this is the only thing that creates fear in their minds.
I think you are 100% correct. And I remember because the organization you mentioned was the one that sent me your article, and
Yeah,
I was like, okay, how do we amplify this? And I think everybody needs to be asking that question.
yeah,
How do we amplify this? You
yeah,
know, this needs to be talked about communities, and I strongly feel like the Dalit, Sikh, and Muslim communities need to come together and take this issue with Hindutva head on.
yeah,
Um, there's no other way that we can deal with this. There's
yeah,
no other way
yeah.
besides coming together and unifying ourselves and unifying
Unifying
our voices.
and educating and awareing Hindu community as well, because these people have hijacked the faith and
Yeah.
the initiative to de-radicalize the people, because we are talking about a mass scale radicalization. Right now, the
Mhm.
focus should be de-radicalizing at these people, the hate that is in their mind towards the minority communities, because it is going to be lethal. For example, if tomorrow, right now, there is a lot of anti-Christian violence going across the country. How are these people going to live in the US when tomorrow these radicalized people up their attacks on Christian minorities in there? Of course, they will face reprisal here in the host countries because they're living in the Christian countries. The government will also
Yeah.
take note. They have to, like, because this is a serious issue. We're not talking about popcorns and Coke and pizza. We're talking about the lives of the people, and
Yeah.
every lives matter. Those innocent people, those poor people, those people in the rural areas, not living in the gated communities, they're at the risk right now. So it's important for us to, like, up our game and reach out to these communities, work together, unified and jointly, and resist these fascist forces.
100%. All right, Raqib. We've been at it for an hour, so I have to end this,
Yeah,
but it was great talking to you.
same
Thank
here.
you. Thank you for joining me, and it was very nice meeting you.
Yeah, same here. Thank you, Monica, and thanks again for organizing this. Really appreciate it. You take care.
Me
Good care of
too.
yourself. Okay, stay in touch. Bye bye.
Bye.